Jaya Narada Hare Jaya Narada Hare Jaya 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 Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya 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 Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jai Jai Shri Bhagwan ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. On behalf of ISKCON founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, I would like to welcome all of you to ISKCON Naperville. First of all, can you do some adjustments? Can the ladies come on this side, men on that side, and please leave a space in front of Srila Prabhupada and not to turn your back on Srila Prabhupada. And if we can maintain this will be great. Can you all face this way, because this is where the speaker is. And elderly people can sit on the chair. Thank you so very much. Is there anyone here for the first time? Yeah, can I have a book, please? Please come and receive a book from us. Anyone else? Can you please give? I need more Lingiraju Prabhu. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Give me that. Thank you. Thank you. She got it. Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Please give them a warm welcome. Today, we are very fortunate to have His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj with us. Maharaj has been giving classes for the past 1 week, and he's continuing to be here in the coming week as well. Many of you know His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj, but for those who don't, he is one of very senior disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, a sannyasi disciple, and Maharaj travels and preaches all over the world the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And he has been nurturing the Naperville community over the so many years, and under the care of Maharaj, so many preaching programs have developed all over the world. So today, Maharaj will be speaking on the topic of Srila Bhaktivinod Thakura. So until Maharaj reaches here, can you have a little kirtan, please? Thank you.
Hey, look at that. It works. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. The disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinod Thakura is in just 2 more days, and so that's the topic I'd like to speak about this evening, the life of Srila Bhaktivinod Thakura. Some of you have children. Bhaktivinod Thakura had 10. Enough said, right? And one of those 10 children was a pure devotee. Not only a pure devotee, but in the line of disciplic succession, a great acharya. Enough said, right? Bhaktivinod Thakura, an unprecedented appointment by the British government, was appointed chief magistrate under the British government. It's just below the governor is the chief magistrate. It's number 2 man in the whole shebang. And there was no other such appointment by the British government for a local person. But the local person was Bhaktivinod Thakura. Enough said, right? Ever try to write a Vyasa Puja offering? Takes a while, right? Ever try to write a book? You wrote a book. How many years did it take you? 10 years. You know how many books Bhaktivinod Thakura wrote? 100 books. 10 children. 100 books. Chief magistrate, which means he also had social responsibilities. He had to meet VIPs and, perform the social niceties that somebody that has a high post is expected to do. Enough said, right? Bhaktivinod Thakura, another contribution, is Bhaktivinod Thakura established the Bhakti, we know as Bhakti Riksha program, the Namahata program, with structure that resembles, the Bhakti Riksha program in ISKCON today is patterned after what he did. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds throughout the whole of Bengal. Enough said, right? No. Bhaktivinod Thakura discovered the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and risked his life by doing that. I'll explain. He was fearless. And he was always protected. I'll say it. When Bhaktivinod Thakura was appointed, he was in Puri for a number of years. And while he was in Puri for a number of years, he received a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was unavailable otherwise. A friend, he searched and searched and searched. No commentary, but he just a copy, a bona fide, genuine copy, because there were no printing presses. They began during his time. He got a copy. He read it. Then he got a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. He read it. He read it twice. He read them both twice and started writing. Within 1 year after receiving Srimad Bhagavatam, he started writing about the Srimad Bhagavatam. To his peers, who were British educated, and the British, in order to rule in India, they had to have a propaganda, and they did. They were very good at it. That everything Indian is backwards and everything European is forwards. Facing that intelligentsia, he had to persuade them that they should think otherwise. And the Srimad Bhagavatam was the starting point, the main literature that he was speaking about, writing about. He got a copy of the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. How did he get a copy? He personally hand copied it. You know how big the Sandarbhas are? I mean, they're massive. And he hand copied it so he could have a copy because there weren't printing presses. We're so spoiled. BBT.com, click. Srimad Bhagavatam, click. Credit card information, click. My mailing address, click. Here it is. Or somebody may just come to your door and say, hey, would you like a Srimad Bhagavatam set? I mean, like, we're spoiled. Assiduously, he read all these literatures, and that was part of his composition, his contribution. But this event of finding, I'll come to it later. Finding the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a big deal. It was a big deal. And here's another one. Bhaktivinod Thakura, during his time, from prior to his time, we'll go back to the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll go this way. The time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then, the 6 Goswamis. Then, Rupa and Sanatan, then Jiva Goswami, and Srinivasacharya, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda, and their followers, Rasikananda, and so forth. It was the Gaudiya Vaishnavism was exploding widely. Then there's a whole bunch of time that was kind of quiet. There were some wonderful acharyas, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhusan, but it wasn't to the same volume. In fact, as happens over time, one of the reasons we encourage all devotees, not just the Brahmanas that teach Bhakti Shastri, but all devotees to read Prabhupada's books, because over time, there were deviations. 13 different, one of his books was detailing the 13 different Apasampradayas. And some said this and did this, and some said that and did that, and they each had their characteristics. And that's when he came on the scene. So he had to set the boat back upright. And he did. It wasn't easy, but he was exceptionally powerful and empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and protected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Fearless. You'll hear it you hear me say that word about 6 times. He was fearless. At the end, he wrote an autobiography that was one of his books. And towards the end of his life, he was in Calcutta, and a British government officer came to him, requested permission to meet with him. Of course, he granted permission to meet with him. And the British officer confided that he had made a murder plot to kill him, because he saw how dangerous he was to British rule, because he was not speaking against the British, but he was speaking in favor of Vedic culture, which the British were speaking against. And he was doing it so effectively, and the intelligentsia and government officers, those 2 categories, the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, were being influenced. He saw this man is dangerous, so he had a murder plot. But then he didn't go through with it. And he came to Bhaktivinod Thakura to apologize. And Bhaktivinod just wrote, I was very surprised. But he was fearless. And Lord Jagannath protected me. So here's some more of how Lord Jagannath protected him. You see him with books on his lap and 6 gigantic strands of beads around his neck, and nice Vaishnav tilak. On the left side, that's the date of his birth. On the right side was the date of his departure. So we're observing his disappearance day. So do the math. He was nearly 80 years old. Is that right? Nearly 70-something years old. And Prabhupada gave us the worship of Gaur Nitai. Bhaktivinod Thakura worshiped Gaur Gadadhar. These are his deities of Gaur Gadadhar. And why? Well, one of the reasons why is he was very inclined to the rasika aspect of bhakti, the raga-nuga, spontaneous devotion aspect of bhakti. Although he knew everything A to Z, he was personally attracted, and that was the deity of his worship. Because of his being a magistrate, he had to address in ways like you see here. Pretty fancy dress for a Vaishnav. But notice one of the reasons for selecting this particular image or photograph is, notice the pocket watch hanging from the front part of his jacket. Well, watches weren't really fashionable during his time. They weren't really used so much during his time, but he used it. He used it very meticulously. I'm going to read something. I know a devotee couple, husband and wife are both doctors. And husband and wife are both preachers, and they have 2 children, and they're really busy. Doctors are really busy anyways. And I happened to visit their home on the occasion of Bhaktivinod Thakura's appearance or disappearance, probably appearance, it was in September. And they just wanted to hear about his use of time, because they look up to Bhaktivinod Thakura because they're really busy people. And they admired how he used his time. So let's hear about how he used his time. He was never idle, being always engaged in the service of the Lord. Between 7:30 and 8 p.m., he would go to bed. He would then rise just before 10 p.m. 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. And then he would light his oil lamp and write books until 4 a.m. Then he would again rest for a maximum of a half an hour till 4:30. At 4:30, he would wash his hands and face, sit down, and chant on his beads. He never showed his beads to anyone, but would chant on them constantly as time permitted. 7 a.m., he answered all correspondence. At 7:30, he read various religious and philosophical works for 1 hour. At 8:30, he received visitors, if any, or else continued to read till 9:30, 7:30 till 9:30. At that time, he would walk back and forth on the veranda of his house, contemplating different religious questions and solving them in his mind. Bhaktisiddhanta did the same thing. He did it for an hour every day. Sometimes he would solve them aloud as if preaching to some unseen guest. He would rest briefly from 9:30 to 9:45. They didn't have alarm clocks. I don't know how he did it. Then take bath and breakfast, which usually consisted of a half quart of milk, 2 chapatis, and some fruit. At 9:55 a.m., by his pocket watch, Thakur would don his uniform and leave for court in his carriage. Now note, 9:45, took his bath, had breakfast, got dressed in 10 minutes. Impossible. I mean, not impossible, he did it. For ordinary people, it's not possible. Listen to the rest. As a magistrate, he wore a coat and pants, like this. On his neck were 6 strands of large Tulsi beads. He was resolute in his court decisions and would decide a case immediately, not tolerating any humbug. He did his business and left. He shaved his head monthly and never cared what anyone thought of it. The lawyers and Englishmen were astounded by the Thakur's capacity for work. At 10 a.m., court began, so his home and the court were 5 minutes away. He would hear between 30 and 50 cases per day. Does that sound like India court system? 30 to 50 cases per day, yet he finished by 1 p.m. What took other magistrates 1/2 hour, he finished in 5 minutes. He took another 2 minutes to write the judgment in detail. Some of his British superiors became envious and tried to discourage him, but he was not affected. At 1 p.m. he went home, refreshed himself, and then returned to work at 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Every evening after his court duties, Bhaktivinod would translate some Sanskrit religious works into Bengali by dictating it to his secretary. Then there was an evening bath and meal consisting of a little rice, 2 chapatis, and another half quart of milk. Bhaktivinod Thakur worked with a pocket watch so that everything he did was on schedule. At Indian Standard Time. There's a few Indians here. And a few of us that aren't. And we like to be on time. Bhaktivinod Thakur was on time. Precisely on time. Despite his heavy domestic and official responsibilities, Bhaktivinod Thakur's every moment was embellished with an intense desire to render service to the Lord. Now, this isn't necessarily his pocket watch. This is just off the web. It's a pocket watch. So that's how it was fashionable. I mean, it wasn't popular, but it was just, they were made in Germany, and he got one and he used it. He lived by it. Shortly after he graduated from college, because he was from an aristocratic family, his father was deceased, so a friend of the family appointed him the position of a manager of a large company. One of the first things he did was he was checking the bookkeeping, and he found that an error was made in favor of the company and against a customer. So he went to the customer and gave back. He reimbursed the customer. You overcharged you. Here's your money back. The owner of the company said, he found out that he did that. He said, you got the wrong job. You should be a school teacher or something like that. So he became a school teacher for a while. And then he became accepted as a judge, appointed as a judge by the British government. And one of the first places he was appointed to was a place where the people in that locality were afraid of a ghost in a tree. So at night, they would go to the ghost and make offerings, go to the tree and make offerings to the ghost. And Bhaktivinod Thakur didn't like that. So what he did was, from his modest salary, he gave a donation to a Brahmana and requested the Brahmana to sit underneath the tree during the day and simply recite Srimad Bhagavatam from morning till night. And when he completed the Bhagavatam in its entirety, a branch from the upper part of the tree broke. The ghost was released. The ghost cast a voice thanking the Brahmana for releasing him from his curse to become a ghost. And that was the end of the ghost worship. Just on the faith that Bhaktivinod Thakur had in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, he became well known by the British, so much so that there was a fellow named Bhishika Sen that they saw was a problem for the government. Why was he a problem for the government? Well, he claimed, first of all, that he was Mahavishnu, and he had two main associates, and they were, associates of Vishnu. One was Balaram, and the other was something else. And he was a mystic. He was a Apa Sampradaya from a certain group of the 13 group, Ati Bhadi, Apa Sampradaya mystic. He had long hair, and he would do mystical things. He would shake his hair, and fire would come out of his hair. And people thought, wow, he's God. Because they didn't read Prabhupada's books. They were not conversant in the scripture. That doesn't make somebody God, because fire comes out of their hair. And he had a big following. He was claiming he came into this world to get rid of the British. And he was openly speaking like this. So the British were worried. And the man was really popular. He had a lot of followers. So their first assignment, British government's first assignment to the chief magistrate, was to deal with this fellow, Bhishika Sen. So as time passed, reports were coming that Bhishika Sen was inviting ladies from Puri to come hear him. And he began speaking about Rasalila. And then this Ati Bhadi Apa Sampradaya group, one of the things they did was pollute the ladies as part of, his pastimes. And they were very charmed, but the men weren't. And the men started complaining. So Bhaktivinod told the constables, there's been a complaint, bring Bhishika Sen to jail so he can be tried in court. They wouldn't go. They were too afraid. So Bhaktivinod Thakur went with them, and there's a very detailed description of their exchange. Bhaktivinod asked some open-ended questions, and he was very insulting of the British and of Bhaktivinod and anybody that wasn't on his team. And Bhaktivinod asked him specifically about his activities with ladies, and he didn't deny it. So Bhaktivinod said, you come with me. And then the man shook his hair, and fire came out of his hair, and all the constables stood back. Bhaktivinod grabbed him by the arm. You come with me. And he said, it's my leela, I'll come with you. So he was put in jail. He was fasting in jail for, he had two avatar associates. There we go. And 21 days he was fasting in jail, waiting for his court trial. 21 days fasting. That's his austere guide. He cursed Bhaktivinod Thakur's family to die. His daughter came down with a very intense fever, presumably as a result of the consequence of the curse. His wife, Bhagavati Devi, pleaded with him, please let this fellow go. Our daughter is at risk. Adamant. This man is a cheater. He's a bad person. He has to be dealt with. In course of time, his daughter's fever broke. He was brought to trial, and while he was in trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself contracted a fever. As he was writing the decision, it says his hand was shaking, and he was to be put in jail for a certain period of time. Not like life, but some extended period of time. And as he was being taken from the courtroom, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had the courage and the wisdom to have his hair cut, because it said that yogis store their power in their hair. So he got a big pair of scissors and cut his long hair, and he fell to the ground. And in some number of days, he died. And end of story. Fearless. Fearless. Some years later, in 1874, he came to find out that there were 80,000 rupees misappropriated from the Jagannath temple by the king. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur confronted him. And his punishment was 80,000 rupees worth of prasad or bhoga had to be offered to Lord Jagannath. That was another thing. When he took responsibility as the chief magistrate, he became the chairman of the board that oversees the temple. And one of the first things he did is restored the 52 offerings a day. 52. As soon as one is taken, another is placed. But they have to have cooks in multiple kitchens going on simultaneously in sequence. And it's a lot of organize a Rath Yatra feast cooking. And it was every day. 52 offerings every day. He was in charge, along with 10 children, and writing 100 books. And writing 20 to 30 decisions a day in court. Powerful. Powerful. So the punishment, which is actually a blessing, you get to serve Lord Jagannath by making cooked offerings until that 80,000 rupees was paid back. Here it says 52, but I think it's 32. How many offerings a day? Anyone here from Puri? 52 or 32? I think it's 32. So the king was very angry. The king, by this time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a very popular person, so you couldn't just have him killed. He was contemplating it. But instead, what he did was he had 50 pundits chanting mantras for 30 days with black magic to kill the Thakur at the end of those 30 days. What happened was, at the end of those 30 days, his son died suddenly. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote about the event because he heard about it as it was going on. It was like really secret. Shh, don't tell anybody. But of course, daily he was getting reports about what was going on. Fearless. He continued requiring the king to do his 80,000 rupees repayment to Lord Jagannath. And his son died. The king felt very sorry that he had offended Lord Jagannath and offended Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Another nice incident, Bhaktivinod Thakur did not become initiated by his Diksha guru until sometime later. Meanwhile, in the Jagannath Ballabh Gardens, very famous, those of you who've been to Puri, you know where that place is. The Jagannath Ballabh Gardens is a celebrated place where Ramananda Roy, when he was living in Puri at the request of Mahaprabhu, he would give discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam. So following Ramananda Roy, the great associate of Mahaprabhu, he was doing the same. He formed a group called Bhagavata Samsat and was speaking. And because he was who he was, it was very well attended. But there was a Babaji, Raghunath Das Babaji, that took exception. And he started speaking against this organization and against Bhaktivinod Thakur, telling people even don't attend. After some time, he contracted cholera and became very, very seriously ill, on his way to death. In a feverish state, he had a dream where Lord Jagannath appeared and said, "You've offended a great devotee, Bhaktivinod." It wasn't Bhaktivinod Thakur, Kedarnath Datta. "You've offended him. You should go fall at his feet, beg his forgiveness." So he did. And when he came to Bhaktivinod Thakur, he explained why he was speaking against him. He said, "You're speaking the Bhagavatam, but you're not wearing tilak, and you don't have neck beads. You're not carrying the external attire of a Vaishnava, and yet you're speaking Bhagavatam. This isn't right. That's why he spoke against you." And then Bhaktivinoda very softly said, "These items are given by Guru at the time of Diksha. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath have not arranged yet that I can found my Guru. So should I wear these ornaments that are gifted by the Guru before I receive Diksha?" Now, Prabhupada's standard was other. He had us wear neck beads and tilak, pronto. But during Bhaktivinod Thakur's time, those were given by the Guru at the time of Diksha. So Bhaktivinod Thakur gave him some medicine that got him well, and they became very good friends. Happy story. There's another Babaji, obviously during Bhaktivinod Thakur's time in Puri, there were lots of Babajis. Here's one. And he had particular affection for Swarup Das Babaji. Swarup Das Babaji, that's not him, it's just a, Google image of a sadhu with a jata on the top of his head. He was blind. So he had a very small bhajan kutir, and he would stay in his bhajan kutir doing his bhajan all day long. In the evening, when it became a little cooler, he would come out, sit, and people were waiting for him to come out of his bhajan kutir, and they brought Jagannath Prasad, handfuls of it for him. He ate very little, very cordial, and he had somebody read from Chaitanya Charitamrita or one of the Vaishnava teachings, and he would just sit and listen. At 10 o'clock, he'd go back into his bhajan kutir and continue his bhajan. At midnight, he came out of his bhajan kutir and made his way to the ocean where he would take his bath. He did it at night because he was afraid that people would see him leaving his bhajan kutir, do some service. He didn't want to accept service from anybody. Bhaktivinod Thakur describes his interaction with Swarup Das Babaji, described him as very soft-spoken, very soft-hearted, and very, very strong in his message that he would give. And he personally told Bhaktivinod Thakur, "Krishna Nam Bulibe Na." Never forget the name of Krishna. So these are some of his activities while in Jagannath Puri. Here's another one of it. So he, as a magistrate, he had obviously social responsibilities to meet with VIPs because he's an author, people that wanted to ask questions or whatever, when you become an important person. And he was very cordial with them. He was so cordial with them that Bhaktisiddhanta sometimes took exception because he would extend kindness to people who weren't qualified. And their moods, in this regard, their mood was different. Bhaktisiddhanta would confront the Shringa Guru. And Bhaktivinod Thakura's approach was humble persuasion. By his purity and his softness and his elevated character, he would lift people. Many such things. The Harmonist was one of the regular, aside from his 100 books, the Harmonist was a regular publication of Bhaktivinod Thakura, and he would write about people to help revive bhakti. He would help speak about writings of different persons in the bhakti line. They weren't exactly Mahaprabhu followers. Some were, some weren't. But he was promoting, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commented, he would sometimes promote unworthy people. Like, he was a lion. He was like Lord Shingadev, non-compromising. And Bhaktivinod Thakur, it's not that he didn't know the difference, but his approach was to gradually elevate, and it was very effective. So here's some of his fancy attire as a chief magistrate in Puri. Here's a photograph of his 10 children and his wife and a couple of servants in the background. And notice on the far left upper, that's Bimal Prasad, or Bhaktisiddhanta. I mean, he's celebrated, but he offered prayers to Lord Jagannath, please send a ray of Vishnu because it's too difficult. The circumstance here at this time, Kali Yuga has advanced and Sampradaya of Mahaprabhu has deviated. Send a ray of Vishnu. So he did, as his own son. I'll mention only a little bit of his 100 books. Perhaps most celebrated, there's many. Perhaps most celebrated is Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva Dharma, as you see, the date of its publication was 6 years before he departed this world. Is that right? 14. Okay. So it's in his 60s. He's in his 60s. Very mature, in-depth. It's essentially 4 parts. It's describing his Dasamula Tattva, the essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's an explanation of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani. He's giving, as the title is, Jaiva Dharma, the Dharma of the living entity in its progressive stages to spiritual perfection. Some of you may have attended the Manashiksha seminar. Some of you, if you didn't, it's probably available somewhere, YouTube. In this Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinod Thakur wrote about the Manashiksha, or he wrote about the teachings on how to achieve pure love for Radha and Krishna, explained in 2 texts called Paddatis, a systematic process, step by step, to get to pure love for Radha and Krishna. One is an internal process of purification given to Raghunath Das by Swarup Damodar, and another is some daily practices that you do, exoteric processes. he mentions it in Jaiva Dharma. He wrote a commentary on that book, Manashiksha. In fact, a big part of the seminar is taken directly from Bhaktivinod Thakura's commentary on Manashiksha. It's one of his 100 books. That very same year, 1896, here's an illustration from the book. It's a question answer format, like much of the Puranas are question answer format. One of the main speakers is Babaji Maharaj, doesn't give his name. And then at different times, different persons are asking him questions on topics. They don't say, could you give me a lesson on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? It just follows the text of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the questions are asked and the answers are given by Babaji Maharaj and others that are also speakers. And it's woven into the narration is a contemporary thing. There's two young men that they have a holiday, so they want to go do something for their holiday. Instead of going to Disneyland or Niagara Falls, they went to the place where Babaji was because they wanted to have an experience. And when they went there, they heard a rousing kirtan, and they were like, wow, what's this? And so in the course of interacting, they became very attracted. And then there's this situation where his relatives, his parents started getting a little nervous, like he's going to become a fanatic. So they wanted to hurry up and get their sons married. You know that thing. And so they got some pressure from mom and dad. So they went to Babaji Maharaj and said, what should we do? In other words, contemporary issues are woven into this telling of philosophy. So what Babaji Maharaj says is, while you're attracted, the eventual advice is they should accept Grahastha ashram. So those of you that are moms and dads and your son or daughter may get a little like fanatical, you can have them read Jaiva Dharma. Anyway, Hare Krishna. The same year, 1896, is the year that Srila Prabhupada wrote Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. Now, this is a photograph of the cover. Of course, it was at that time, 1896, there were offset printing presses, and that's how it was done. From his own pocket, he covered the expense, and copies were sent to universities around the world. A celebrated one in Toronto is a university, McGill University, and one devotee found a copy. But there are others that were found in Bangkok and other places. It was all over the world. He wanted, his wish was, at least the educated people of the world should know who is Lord Chaitanya and what are his teachings. So it's life and precepts. And the first half is, the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. And the second half is his, Bhaktivinod Thakura's signature expression of the 10 essential teachings, I'm saying it 3 times on purpose, of Lord Chaitanya. The 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya follows very much in line with Baladev Vidyabhusan's Nava Prameyas, which follows very much in line with with Madhvacharya's Nava Prameyas, or the 9 pillars of Madhvacharya's teachings. They're not identical, but they're quite similar. And that's in his 100 books, maybe 80 of them have Dasamula. For him, it was very important. And then, of course, not only listing them, but explaining again and again and again, because he wanted the world to understand who is Lord Chaitanya and his teachings. At one of his books was an autobiography. His autobiography was a writing to his son, Lalit Prasad, describing all the details and details and details and details. It was like a letter, but it was an autobiography because he was very conscious that this is going to live beyond him. So he wrote his own autobiography. And Svanikita Jivani is what it ended up being called. The photograph on the right is a photograph of Bhaktivinod Thakura with two associates, and they were in the now Navadvip on top of Rani Dharmshala, looking across the Ganga, and at night they saw something that was a vision. He saw, and the others also saw, and it happened again the next night, same thing, was a very, very tall dome rising into the sky. And Bhaktivinod Thakura, being the personality that he was a government magistrate, which means he had access to government records of maps and histories and things. So he went there, he went to the Brahmanas, he went to the scriptures, etc., etc. Thorough research, and concluded that's the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. So to confirm that that's the birthplace, the vision that he saw, he invited Jagannath Das Babaji. Who's Jagannath Das Babaji? He's his Shiksha Guru, and by Bhaktivinod Thakura's spending time in Vrindavan, he invited him, can you come and spend some time in Mayapur? So he came. He lived to be over 130 years old, between 130 and 140 years old. As you see, this is a photograph. He's hunched over. This is a painting of that photograph. But he was constantly engaged. He was Babaji, constantly engaged in chanting. But he couldn't walk because he was so old and invalid. They had to carry him in a basket. So his servant, Ishan, carried him in a basket to the place where Bhaktivinod Thakura had seen this vision he cut, because it was 2 nights in a row. He lined up where it was, and they found the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. There was a place, because Mayapur at that time, all it was rice fields, agricultural fields and rice fields. And there was a patch of land that wouldn't grow anything. Wouldn't even grow eggplants, wouldn't grow potatoes, wouldn't grow anything. It only grow one thing, tulsis. He said, that's the spot. So he brought Jagannath Das Babaji in a basket, who couldn't walk. And when he got to the spot, Jagannath Das Babaji leaped in the air and started dancing, calling out in Bengali, whatever you say when you see something like Haribol, something. And at that spot, he bravely, I'll say it again, fearlessly and bravely, he went door to door asking all gentlemen to give 1 rupee for the construction of the temple that's the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. Now, why is that a big deal? Besides it's humble, it means the people, there was financial investment in another place being the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. Their income, their livelihood, their financial base was false. And because it was their financial base, what he was doing was taking away their financial base. He was risking his life. Bengal, you don't do that. He did it fearlessly. And he built a small place that's in the backside and left building of this temple that you see here to his son, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. And of course, down the road is the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, which Prabhupada took responsibility for and turned it over to Ambarish Prabhu and the rest of ISKCON. One of the places that he resided so he was in Puri for a long time. He wanted to leave Puri. He put in request for transfer so many times the British government wouldn't give it, so he quit, so they gave him a transfer. And the place he wanted to transfer to was Krishnanagar, which is kind of like the headquarters around where the birthplace of Mahaprabhu is. And so he built this little bhajan kutir, or home, that he named Swananda Sukhada Kunj. And there's a lot of history, but I'm looking at the clock, so I'm not going to do all the history. It's a place from which he said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda started the Namahatta program. And although he was a householder with 10 children, etc., a very intensely renounced Babaji named Gorkishore Das Babaji, who was the Diksha Guru of Bhaktisiddhanta, also had his residence. Here's Bhaktivinod Thakur's writing. My small cottage is shining beautifully within that most enchanting garden called Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Living there, I will sing Lord Krishna's holy name, and I will greedily hanker for that time when I will get the service of him and his associates. Here's the front gate. Notice I'm going fast because time is flying. Here's the entrance, big boundary wall, and the entrance gate. Inside the entrance gate, Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Upstairs is his residential quarters. And in the far end, this is his samadhi, or murti at his samadhi. Here's a close-up of the same. And right is around the side, if you circumambulate around his samadhi, you'll find the samadhi of his personal servant. Krishnadas Babaji was his personal servant. His samadhi is at the same location. And here's his deities. These are different set of Gaur Gadadhar deities that we saw at the very beginning. Here they are, dressed very nicely, Gaur Gadadhar. On a different day, a different outfit, same deity. And another photograph of nicely decorated deity, Gaur Gadadhar. This is the place where he would do his work. Of course, it's now in very good repair because they received donations to keep it in good repair. Here's his bedroom and a desk where he would work, kept very neat and clean. This is a bed where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would rest. Before there were electric fans, he had another kind of a fan. I forget how it was used, kerosene or something like that, to power it. So, it was very hot in Bengal sometimes. His bookcase, his personal books that he kept there, so they were preserved over all these years. His personal belongings, little clay pot for drinking water, etc. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's residence in the same quarters. Sometimes he would stay with him. Here's the desk where Bhaktisiddhanta would sit. And here's the outside of the building again. The structure on the left side is kind of like a mandap area. It's where he would sit, or where devotees go and have kirtan for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. It's a wonderful place for kirtan. And then his samadhi is at the far end of that kirtan hall. And you see that yellow structure over on the right side, right behind Tulsi Devi's. That's the bhajan kutir of Gorkishore Das Babaji. Gorkishore mainly remained in Navadvip, but he would come by boat from time to time and stay in close proximity with Bhaktivinod and sit at his feet and hear from Bhaktivinod Thakur. That's his bhajan kutir. Here's what the entrance is on our left. We're facing Bhaktivinod Thakur's samadhi. Here's a photograph where his bhajan kutir is, a sitting place. And here's the outside again of Swananda Sukhada Kunj. In addition to staying in Mayapur, he also sometimes stayed in Vrindavan. This is Bhaktivinod Thakur's Bhajan Kutir in Vrindavan. As you remember, he met Jagannath Das Babaji there and invited him to come to Mayapur. So he and Bhakti Siddhanta have Pushpa Samadhis there. And here's a chair that Bhakti Siddhanta would use, very fashionable chair with nice long arms. And his bed on the right side. Bhaktivinod Thakur's shoes and his walking cane. And this is in Bhakti Kuti. Towards the end of Bhaktivinod Thakur's life, he wanted to engage in Nirjan Bhajan, just solitary chanting. So it was a large building, and part of that large building has been donated to ISKCON. So they have a temple, and there's where you see the murti of Bhaktivinod right next to Prabhupada's murti. Very unusual. But that was Bhaktivinod Thakur's place. They call it Bhakti Kuti, or that's what he called it. There it's just, you walk out the front door and down about 20 steps, and that's the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, and near to the sea. So that was his place when in Puri, after he had left government service. And here's a very, very old photograph, a rare photograph of Bhaktivinod Thakur in his final days. Much leaner and very intense. Here's a saying that he wrote on the occasion of Haridas Thakur's passing, celebrated one. He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Notice it rhymes. It was written in English. He had command of Sanskrit, English, and of course Bengali, and of course Oriya. He was an amazing person, powerful, great acharya. It was on his vision that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission should spread around the world, which was turned over to his son and turned from his son over to Srila Prabhupada, and here we are. We're here, one can say certainly because of Srila Prabhupada, but we can also say equally because of Bhaktivinod Thakur. So it's only fitting to honor him on his appearance and disappearance days minimally. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur ki jai. So let's see if there's some discussion. It's 6:30. We've been going for an hour.
So, Shri Radhika. Similar to how Bhishma Dev served and was maintained by the Kaurava dynasty, the British Raj that Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur served under and represented was tyrannical and corrupt. Did the Thakur feel compromised in his work situation? If so, is there any information about how he reconciled for himself the dichotomy of serving such a corrupt master while being a pure devotee and eternal associate of the Lord?
I don't know of anything written. He may have. I'm not a biographer of his life. But you could ask that question of Rupa Vilas. Write him a letter. He is very, kind, and he's likely to respond. So ask Rupa Vilas that question. There are several. There are others that, if you don't get an answer from Rupa Vilas, I can give you another name. I'm not a biographer of his life, how he reconciled being part of the British government when, in fact, they were abusive in a number of ways. They honored Vedic culture in a number of ways, but they were also abusive, for sure. Anything else? online.
This is by Gopal Hari Prabhu. You mentioned that Srila Bhaktivinod Thakura slept 2 hours every day. How many?
How can we reduce our sleep? You have to be a mystic. I mean, you have to be empowered. And, you know, how did Prabhupada didn't sleep much more than that. And how did he do it? And his body, Bhaktivinod Thakur's health wasn't great. There were multiple periods of time when he was just, you know, in very poor health. It wasn't like always. These pictures don't show he's in poor health. But he had some health situations that he dealt with periodically. They're quite strong. Prabhupada also, without going into details. So how? By empowerment. And, you know, the intensity of desire to be engaged in service, not passion, transcendental desire to be engaged in service to Krishna is where that spiritual strength and spiritual energy and empowerment came from. That's my understanding. Anything else? Okay. Premananda, take it away. I think she's going to need a microphone.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. His Holiness Ramapad Swami Maharaj has been here this past 1 week, and he will be continuing to give us his association, valuable association, this coming week until Thursday. Every day morning, 7:30, we have Srimad Bhagavatam classes here at the temple, and evening there are home programs. The information is available on our website and many WhatsApp groups. You are all invited to attend the programs. Thank you again.
Excuse me. Tomorrow morning is a class for the Chinese devotees.
Okay.
So it's not going to be here. It's going to be at 6:30 in the morning, and it's not live streamed.
Okay. So Tuesday onwards.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7:30, Srimad Bhagavatam class here in the temple. You are all invited. Please come. Another important announcement is a very famous devotee in ISKCON. His name is His Grace Amarendra Das Prabhu. He will be coming to ISKCON Naperville on July 9th and speaking on a topic which is the Vrindavan, the land of the Lord. So it's almost a whole day program starting at 11 a.m., goes till 3:30. There will be lunch breaks, snacks and all that. But it's a very rare opportunity. We are having Amarendra Prabhu here. You are all invited. The information is again available on our website and weekly communications.
He's a Sanskrit scholar and a very gifted speaker and lots of humor. He gets people laughing a lot. He's a really good speaker.
Yes, very good speaker, and we fortunately got him because ISKCON Chicago was hosting a program and we have him here just 1 day. And so please make the best use of the opportunity. The next announcement is about Children's Gita Camp. And this year it is for children 5 years to 12 years old. We have been doing this for many, many years. Last year and all it got disrupted because of COVID. Again, renewing the program. And Sri Radhika Devidasi, who is leading at this point, reminded me a couple of times to announce that until June 30th is the early bird registration. You have some advantage in registering by June 30th. And you will lose that financial advantage if you do that after that. So please go ahead and register. It is a really wonderful program, and we look forward to seeing your children here. The Festival of Holy Name, you want to say something about it? Yeah.
So Mataji mentioned until Thursday, His Holiness Prabhupada Swami Maharaj will be here in Naperville. And from Friday onwards, after this extended Krishna Katha, we will have an opportunity to be absorbed in the Krishna Nam, Harinam. It's a Festival of Holy Name celebrated event that's been happening in ISKCON Chicago. All of you are more than welcome. If you need any details on the registration, please see me after the program. It's from July 1st, Friday evening, to July 4th, Monday afternoon. Thank you.
Festival of Holy Name also is a program His Holiness Prabhupada Swami Maharaj has been conducting in Chicagoland for many years. And anyone who has participated knows that how beneficial it is for our own spiritual growth. The last day of the program, there is a 32-round chanting in the association of other devotees. And it is an experience that you don't want to let miss that. So please register. There is a couple of other things. Today's Sunday feast is sponsored by Dev Iyer Prabhu. Is he here? Anyway, before we acknowledge that, I have one more thing. We are now, every Sunday, we acknowledge a devotee or appreciate a devotee during this Sunday feast announcements. There are, as I said in the last week, there are unlimited number of devotees serving in this temple. Some of them you know, some of them you don't, and but they have given their very valuable time and energy serving in this temple. So we are making an effort to introduce them to you and acknowledge their services. Today, I'll speak about His Grace Sri Kishore Das Prabhu. Can you please stand up, Sri Kishore? Please stay there. Sri Kishore Das Prabhu has been practicing Bhakti Yoga over 13 years or so. He got introduced to Krishna consciousness at ISKCON Pune. Such amazing devotees there. He got trained under them, and he was leading many children and youth programs in various places, including very well-known IITs. With all that training and experience, somehow or other, with his engineering degree and all that, he ended up coming here to do a postdoctoral program at Argonne National Laboratory. And you can imagine, he's such an excellent, academically, he's a brilliant devotee. But he's so humble too. And I was very fortunate to have somehow get to know that he is coming here, and in his early days I could personally serve him to get settled, and in course of time his wife and two beautiful children came and joined, and they purposefully moved across from here in those apartments, McDowell apartments, and upon my request he immediately started a Bhakti Vriksha program, and also guiding many devotees who were looking for someone to connect them to their spiritual master, His Holiness Radhanatha Swami Maharaj. And his service in this temple has been so valuable because all those devotees got highly benefited. We all had his amazing association, Bhagavatam classes, and so many other things. And by the time he completed his postdoctoral fellowship, there was a real tough period in his life. He's the only breadwinner in the family, and by his devotion and I don't know, Krishna's reciprocation to him was so amazing, so he could have gone to any place, any part of the world with his job, but Krishna took him to Tirupati, and he got an amazing, excellent position in a famous university there, and the Lord facilitated in such a way, he is taking him back to ISKCON Tirupati. His wife and children are already gone, and when I talk with him, I always feel like he's going into Vaikunta planet, Oh, he's not missing anything, but we will miss him terribly. And I have requested Sri Kishore Prabhu to continue his classes online. And so all those he is guiding will continue receiving his association. We look forward him visiting us in an yearly fashion. And Sri Kishore Prabhu, if you would like to say a couple of words, your experience here, please.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you very much. I don't know, I have no words to express my gratitude to the entire community. From day one, I have received a lot of love, lot of support from each and everyone in this community, and I felt so sheltered here. It was a nightmare for me to come to the US, but I felt so sheltered after coming here. Devotees have treated me just like their family member. I'm so grateful, especially to Premananda Mataji. Even before I came here, she was in contact with me. She was constantly trying to find out what is the best that she can do for me, starting from arranging for prasadam, everything she did, arranging for house, everything. I'm so grateful to you, Mataji, and the entire community as well. I hope I'll keep coming here regularly and associate with all of you. So I'm traveling back to India in another 10 days. I seek prayers and blessings of all of you on our family, so we can continue serving Srila Prabhupada wherever we are. And that's all. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sri Krishna Prabhu. So today's Sunday feast, Prasadam, is sponsored by Dev Iyer. As you know, he regularly sponsors. He is seeking prayers for his son's health. So please chant after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And his prasadam is packed and it is downstairs. I hope somebody will take care of this to give it to Devayar Prabhu. If anyone else would like to sponsor Sunday Feast prasadam for whatever occasion in your life. Today I don't see Ramdas Prabhu here, but oh, there he is. Can you stand up, please? That is Ramdas Prabhu. You can contact him. He will make the arrangements. Prasadam is served outside, I guess, right? Thank you all for coming once again. Really appreciate that. Thank you.